Hi, my name is Hannah. Welcome back to my channel. I've read some good books. We're back for another wrap up, so let's just jump into that. So the first book was a recommendation from Audrey over at Audrey Approved. So I will make sure to link her channel down below. And you should really check out her channel. She has really good book recommendations and really interesting thoughts on the books that she reads. So I picked up the book, Smoke Gets in Your Eyes and Other Lessons from the Crematory by Caitlin Doughty. This book is a mix between a memoir and a more factual explanation of death, and the memoir is talking about her time working in a crematorium and then everything surrounding that and her experiences with death. And I really enjoyed this book. It gets a little dark and it gets a little gruesome in parts. It does not shy away from telling you exactly what happens when someone is embalmed, when someone is cremated. It gives you the kind of nitty-gritty of the death industry. I liked that it was in kind of a memoir form because narratively I was very invested and I liked her voice and I wanted to know what was going on. But also I do think there was so much interesting information in this, and it really just caused me to think about my own relationship with death and how I want to be taken care of after I die, and what would be meaningful to me if one of my loved ones dies. Now, I know many people do not like to think about that, but for me, I find it really reassuring to feel like I have some sort of plan of what would be meaningful and what would really help me connect and feel positively about the experience of death. I know that for me, thinking of the worst case scenario, thinking of these things and realizing that this is how I'm going to be okay if something like this happens, and I feel like it's really helpful to me. So I really liked it, but be aware of the subject matter before going in. But it was a really well done book and I really do recommend it. It did remind me that I read the book All the Living and the Dead a couple months ago, and that also really explored death. But I think there was something about this book that I felt was a little bit better. It explored it maybe in a more in-depth way and a more personal sort of way, whereas All the Living and the Dead really focused on interviewing all sorts of people connected with the death industry. It went wide. I feel like the Smoke Gets in Your Eyes book went much more deep, right? And I really appreciated that. I thought that it did a really good job that way. So this next book was a recommendation from the channel Bookworm Adventure Girl. So I will make sure to link her channel down below. And I'm really glad I picked this up. This is One Drum by Richard Wagamisi. This is an Indigenous author who is talking about his culture's traditions and spirituality and what the meaning is of that and how they feel connected to the world. This book focused on a lot of teachings of being humble, of respecting others, of learning, and of courage in difficult times. And it gave kind of a step-by-step how to incorporate some of these rituals and ceremonies in your life to give you a richer spiritual life. Now, I think you do not have to have the same beliefs as him to really benefit from some of these things. I think you can be from whatever religion or not religion to really find this helpful to enrich your spiritual life. For me, I had a difficult week last week and I was really struggling with some anxiety, and this was a really good reminder to be more mindful and to take things a little slower. And so I really appreciated that. It's the kind of book though that I feel like I listen to it on audiobook and I wish I had a hard copy because I want it on my shelf and I want to underline some passages and think, okay, these are really good lessons that can be applied to many situations. I did enjoy some of the traditional stories that were shared, as well as these ceremonies and rituals that you can use in your life, or just the opportunity to evaluate your own rituals. Why do you pray? Why do you go for a walk in the morning? What kinds of things are you doing to connect with yourself, to connect with a higher power, and how are you feeling that spirituality in your life? At one point, he says that a lot of society's ills aren't necessarily a physical problems or mental problems or educational problems. A lot of them are spiritual problems. And if we can all work to connect better on a spiritual level, a lot of the other ills will heal as well. And I think that this was really beautiful, and the writing and the storytelling was gorgeous. So overall, I really enjoyed this book, and I'm glad I picked it up. It's something different than what I normally pick up. And I don't really love self-help books. I'm very judgy on my self-help books, and while this had a lot of elements of things that you can use for self-improvement, the way that it was structured never felt very preachy or telling me that I have to do this in this way. It was more evaluating and using ritual in order to connect with things on a spiritual level. I just really needed that last week. And still need it now. I really would like to get a hard copy of this book. So I really enjoyed this book. I'm glad I picked it up. Now, Olive at Abookolive recommended the book Sounds Like Titanic, a memoir by Jessica Chihito Hindman. This book is a memoir by Jessica, and it is following her time working in a traveling orchestra. But the problem is, she is not a professional level violinist. You can't actually hear the real instruments. She's up there playing, but who knows if she's on tune, if she's good? It doesn't matter because the composer, who she never names, just cranks up the volume on a pre-recording, and she never has to actually play. She is traveling around as a professional musician who can't play music. She is also a university student who studies Middle Eastern studies right during 9/11, and she cannot find a job working in that field because nobody actually cares about the truth of the issues. They care more about how they feel. And it's this really interesting exploration of what is truth. Does it matter? How do we connect with things? This book hits on a lot of important themes and a lot of things that I'm just interested in. I played the violin all growing up, and so I really liked the discussion of her love of the violin from childhood, and just how being a professional violinist is not something you can just do unless you've had so many years and so many hours of practice. Even if you're the best person in your town at violin, you're not going to be professional because the field has such high standards. And I found it at times humorous and at times really depressing. Her talk of playing the violin when it was basically all faked, and then her anxiety surrounding it. So I really loved the exploration of her anxiety. The way she talked about her anxiety in this book really hit me close. She talks about how sometimes anxiety is talked about as a misfiring of the fight or flight response, right? So a bear is coming. Are you going to fight it or are you going to run away? Well, she said that's never felt how her anxiety is felt. Instead, it feels like the panic you would feel if the bear already has you and is eating you. And I'm like, I completely get that. I've never been like, oh, if I can just rationally or move. No, I feel like I'm being eaten, right? And I think that that was really relatable. I also am very interested. My husband did study Middle Eastern studies for a while in university. And so I was interested to hear about her education. So there were so many elements that just really spoke to me in this book. There were a few things in the narrative that kind of took me out of things. Every once in a while, she would insert a conversation in or something that just felt a little out of place. And I just think it could have been a little bit cleaner, like put together a little neater. There were just a few things that felt a little inconsistent. But overall, this book it's like somebody said, what are Hannah's interests? I know, I'm gonna make a list of them and put them in a book, and it's gonna be a real book and it's a memoir, and here we are. So overall, I really did enjoy this book. It was a really good nonfiction read. Now, I heard about this book from AJ Dunn over at AJ Dunn Reads and Writes, so I will make sure to link their channel down below. And I read The Last Child by John Hart. Now, this has our protagonist, our 13-year-old Johnny, and he is a struggling kid. A year before, his sister was abducted and has gone missing. And he has spent the past year doing everything he can to try and find his sister. At the same time, his father's disappeared, his mother is addicted to pills and has an abusive boyfriend, and it's just the falling apart of this family and him desperately wanting answers. So we get that. We also get the kind of cop drama. We have the police officer that was assigned to the case that just, it's been eating him up, that he hasn't been able to solve it. So that's setting our stage. If you want tone, think, if you read Demon Copperhead, think we're set in that universe. Like, that's kind of what I felt jumping into it. Like, all right, we're in Demon Copperhead land, and we have this cop, and everything kind of starts up again when another girl is kidnapped and goes missing. And Johnny witnesses something that maybe is a clue to the missing girl, or maybe to his sister. So we have an interesting premise that grabs you right away. And this is the kind of cop show murder mystery that was so well done, right? All those twists and turns had me out on the edge of my seat halfway through. I'm like, I'm only halfway through, but this is getting wrapped up. But now what is happening? It just kept coming at me, but it left enough clues that when you get to the end, you don't feel cheated. You feel like, wow, that really came together right. That had all those clues. All the breadcrumbs were laid, but they were subtle enough that I wasn't predicting it. For a mystery thriller kind of book, I adored it. Like, it was so gripping, right? It did everything that I wanted it to. I think my only complaint, because I can't just give it a wonderful, everybody should read it, I have one complaint. And the big complaint that I have is the same reason that I don't really read Stephen King. And it's because the only Stephen King book that I've read is The Green Mile. And I did not like the portrayal of the one black man as this magical, stupid black man who has like kind of magical powers. And I feel like there was a character in here. The only explicitly stated black man in the book as some sort of childlike, softy, magical person. Like, I think there's a trope there, and I think it's just a little bit not good. I'm not really a big fan of that, which is too bad, because I think had they had maybe more black characters to balance that out, to make him not feel like this one caricature standing out in the book, or had the book had maybe a little more nuance to this character, it maybe would have worked. But that was the only thing that threw me out of the book a little and made me kind of have a bad taste in my mouth. Other than that, I think the book was really well done. I just think it's probably, so I do recommend it. I just think it's good to be aware of what kind of tropes are used and whether that is a very positive portrayal of groups of people. And so just be aware. I just feel like I don't know. Have you read books that have had that character in it? And does it kind of make you feel like a little bit scummy about it? Like, there's something going on that I wasn't too thrilled about. But overall, this book had all the murder mystery twists and turns. And I mean, I didn't see it coming, but I got to the end and thought I should have seen it coming. I could have solved it, but I didn't, because wow, that was out of nowhere, but it wasn't. And it gave me everything. And I really, really enjoyed it. So if you like murder mystery kind of books, pick this one up, because I think it was well done. And that is what I have read the past week or so. If you have thoughts on these books, please leave them in the comments down below. And I hope that you are all having a good holiday season, however you choose to celebrate. And I hope you are all staying warm and staying safe, and I will see you all on the next one.